So many doors I couldn't think to dream. Just imagine what I can do when you believe. Alone in my room, I cried, Lord, why you love me.
Hey, everybody. This is Voices of Wisdom, incredible conversations that feed the mind, move the heart, and lift the soul. I'm your host, Sabrina Nichole, and I'm so glad you've joined us. March is Women's History Month, and we're elevating the voices of amazing women who are using their gifts to spread love, healing, and hope in the world. Simply put, these are women doing God's work. And speaking of God's work, we're sending a special thanks to our sponsor, The Kindled Life, a company on a mission to spread hope and breast cancer awareness. Check out their website in the video description and place an order in support of breast cancer warriors. Thank you for tuning in to Voices of Wisdom by Sabrina Nichole. I am so excited that this month is Women's History Month, and it gives me the opportunity to elevate the voices of women who are doing God's work. And I am joined this morning by one of the most amazing human beings I know, one of the most phenomenal women. I have had the pleasure and the honor of crossing paths, and we've been so close ever since the first day we met. I am joined today by Miss Yolanda Bynum. And I asked Yolanda, how would you like for me to introduce you? And her response to me was, I'm just Yolanda. Now, I want you to know that this is a woman who is boasting an incredible resume already. She is a C-suite level executive leader. She is an author of multiple books. She is a master facilitator. She is a former teacher who has carried all of those skills into everything that she does. And I don't know if she wants me to share this or not, but she's also a minister. But anyway, you can tell Yolanda has this incredible resume. And yet she says, introduce me as just Yolanda. Yolanda, welcome. And yeah, and tell us about just Yolanda. What?
You know, it's funny because I'm listening to you say the things. I was like, gosh, I need to carry her around in my pocket with me on the rainy days. That just Yolanda sounds amazing. But no, really, the way that I look at it is those are pieces of who I am. But ultimately, I'm Yolanda. You know, if you catch me with my godson or my nieces or my nephews, I'm Auntie something or, you know, Aunt Londa. Really, for me, it is just the culmination of my experiences and, you know, the work that I enjoy and that I love that just, I mean, they come out of me, but they're just a part of who Yolanda really is. So.
That's so beautiful and so powerful, especially, you know, we live in a day and an age in a society where it seems like, at least from my perspective, people are wearing their alphabet soup, you know, in their titles, and they want people to know I'm Dr. So-and-so, or I'm, you know, Reverend so-and-so, or whoever. And, you know, not to take anything from the fact that people earn those credentials mostly, yeah. But it's amazing to come across somebody like you who is so accomplished, who is so well trained and credentialed, and yet so real, authentic, and down to earth. What anchors you in that? What grounds you in that?
You know, I think my family. I have my given family and my chosen family, and I can't walk around saying, "Please call me Elder Yolanda Bynum." They're like, "What?" Mm-hmm. But for me, it really is about keeping the people in my circle that know me because, you know, titles, letters, all of those things are important. There's still one more that I want. But I will say that it reminds me of something that I heard Michael Jackson say years ago before he transitioned. And that was, when someone tells you no, you just find someone, put them in your circle because they'll say yes. And so I'm very cautious about my circle and keeping people in my circle that will keep me authentic. I don't want yes people. I want check Yolanda people when Yolanda is too far over to the left or to the right. Yeah. So for me, it really is about grounding in my family, my friends, given and chosen.
Now, Yolanda, tell us what is God's work that you do? What do you do and how do you do it?
You know what? I thought about how I would describe God's work. And for me, it is the obedience to walk in whatever God called you to do.
Mm,
That is God's work. For me, initially, I thought that was teaching in the classroom. I thought that pouring into the young students. Now, I always joke with folks, I taught kindergarten for 1 week. The little babies didn't quite work for me. But then I taught fifth grade almost 5 years. And what I learned from that is God's work for me did not contain me to a particular place or a particular career. God's work for me is really about whomever he puts in front of me at the time that he does. And so that's all, fluffy. But if I drill down to it, I'm a builder of people. Whether that is in a professional setting, leading, helping folks build their careers, guiding their careers, resume work, coaching, consulting. I describe it as I build people, processes, and professions. So depending on who you are and how you interact with me, one of those in some way I'm going to help you build. And that's kind of where my consulting business name came from, Beyond Expectations. I feel like I was put here to help people get to a point where they see themselves beyond what they ever expected they could be. Whether that's a child in the classroom, an adult sitting in a seat in college, or a young professional coming into their career for the first time. That's what I do.
that's a mouthful and such an incredible um, calling, in my opinion, to think about the building of people, processes, and professions. Like that's, I can't even begin to imagine the heart, soul, and effort that goes into doing that. But I'm also curious, how did you find your way into that kind of work? In other words, what's your call narrative? What was your journey to discovering that this is what you do?
I think I've always been there. I wrote in my last book a chapter about my third grade teacher, Miss Dolores Porter. I love her. My first book is dedicated to her, and she was the protector of my soul from playground bullies. And that's how I describe her.
Wow.
But it was early on. She wrote in one of my report cards, Yolanda finishes her work early to help others. And I found that report card and I actually framed it because I like to tell people I was made for this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm about to date myself where we had these reading cards and they were colored and you would go through the different colors to get to gold, and gold meant you had excelled. Well, I was in third grade reading on a sixth grade level. So I often found myself trying to help others or sitting beside someone, whether it was of my own doing or Miss Porter's doing, trying to help someone else. And I remember she said to me one time, Yolanda, you're talking too much. And I said, well, I'm trying to help. And she said, move your desk beside my desk. And while I was moving my desk, I said, it doesn't matter where you put me. I'm still going to talk, Miss Porter. So imagine at about 8 years old, trying to navigate this thing in me that had already started to bubble up to help.
Yeah.
And to guide and to coach and to lead in some way. Of course, I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
So I got in a lot of trouble at school because I only had Miss Porter for 1 year. And so everyone else was not as accepting of this little girl that had this big vocabulary and this tenacious spirit and just wanted to be and to do.
Yeah.
And so I continued through elementary school, middle school, high school. I got to college and I met someone named Lisa Ross. She worked in the mass communications department. And I remember her telling me, this just doesn't work for me. I need to get this done, but I don't like the way it's working. And without much thought to it, I said, well, if you move this here, move that there, put these things together, and then file it this way, it'll probably make it easier. Because I had watched her use the space.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, I can see something and see someone work in their space and create a more efficient way for people to work in their space.
Mm.
I started practicing that, and I would just do it. I remember walking into one of the dean's offices and I was like, okay, these stacks of papers are not working for me. And he was like, what do you mean not working for you? And so by the time I was done, he let me reorganize his filing system, and it worked for him. So I kind of found myself in different places, getting the opportunity in a safe way to evolve into who I was always going to be.
Mm.
Because
So,
there were folks who just loved me, so they were just like, okay, it's Yolanda, let her do what she's doing. And so as I found myself journeying through college, into my career, into the classroom, I started to organize my classroom in a way where my students took the attendance. If a guest came into the room, based on the seating, they knew what to say to the guest not to interrupt my teaching. We had a system of, everything, and it just ran like clockwork. And I found that my principal kept bringing people to my classroom to see it. And so that's how I got into that, coaching others, because she told one of her principal friends, and they brought me over to their school. And then my career just started from there in the consulting piece.
in the journey that I'm like, oh, remember to come back to that. Oh, remember to elevate that. One of the first things that struck me is you said the teacher's name was Miss Porter. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That Miss Porter was the protector of your soul against the
bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That's such a beautiful sort
So
of
there were times where, I grew up in a very small rural town. My father worked, multiple jobs to provide for us, which meant I didn't get the name brand thing. Sometimes, you had to just pull something out of a pile and throw it on, and hope, you pulled something that didn't have a stain on it to catch the bus. And I remember we had a field day, and the best way I can describe it is I pulled out this shirt, and it was black. I threw it on, got on the bus, realized it was velvet. And field day is like in the middle of July. And I was out there sweating. I was just as hot as I could be. And she came to me. She said, I'm going to give you a t-shirt when you get back in the class, because field day was over. And everybody was just laughing. And they thought it was the funniest thing that I was sweating so bad. And she said, we're going to talk about protecting your skin from the sun. And she made a science lesson. I will never forget. Lord, I might cry telling it. And explained how you could get skin cancer, and sometimes you just have to protect your skin and things like that. And she said, so Yolanda's a little bit ahead of where we are right now in third grade, but it's okay. And I will never to this day forget that. Even sometimes when just in a silly way, I run outside without a jacket, or I get outside, it's hot and I'm rolling up my sleeves, it immediately takes me back to her, because those small moments are the moments where someone's spirit is broken. And I don't think I could have continued on my journey to evolve into me without her keeping me safe from bullies. And we all experience them. I know everybody's like, oh, everybody has bullies, but sometimes those words hit your soul in a way that you can't bounce back. And she continued to keep me covered in a way that I literally thought I was just like this dynamic third grader and nobody could touch me. And but it helped me protect who I was becoming, so that I could really become who I am. So,
someone watching may be asking themselves, Sabrina, why would you ask her about that in the grand scheme of things? Well, I have the privilege and the honor of knowing you a little more personally, a little more closely than some others. And what I can attest to is that in so many ways, I have witnessed you be a protector of souls, right? Whether it's me or somebody else that I've watched you step in and sort of cover and protect. And so I think that's very much a formative story about how you carry that forward. And it's beautiful. Everybody needs somebody that's going to be a protector, right?
Yes.
And you are
And I do have
definitely.
a sense of responsibility to her.
Mm,
I feel that that was one moment that she poured into me, but there were so many small moments where, we would at the time, this is really dating, where we would all bring something in to make a salad. And I
mhm.
didn't have anything to bring. And on my way in the door, she dropped a bottle of salad dressing in my hand and said, "This is what you're bringing."
Wow.
So that no one in the classroom knew that I didn't have anything to bring.
Yeah.
And so when I think about those very small moments, they're not they were small in the moment, but they are so much bigger in the grand scheme of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Miss Porter, thank you for being who you are. Absolutely. There was something else in your journey that struck me, and that was third grade. Got in a lot of trouble because you talked a lot. That resonates with me personally. I think I've shared with you, I got a whooping almost every week in the third grade because my progress report would always say Sabrina is talkative. And like you, they moved me all around the classroom. I sat next to the teacher. I turned and talked to her. They put me at the front, right at the front of the chalkboard. I would turn around and talk to people, and not realizing, not knowing until all these years later that I just that early was tapping into my gift, right?
Yeah.
My gift of public speaking, my gift of relating and connecting with people. Just from your vantage point, can you say something to the necessity of not destroying something so precious, like that seed that is starting to germinate in a young person's life, even that early? How can we avoid killing the seed before it has a chance to blossom?
I think two things come to mind. One, the patience of being gentle in a moment.
Mm.
Because there were so many times where, now that I look back on it, I had a little sassy mouth too, because I was smart. I was very intelligent. And, my father early on had conversations with me. We could just talk and process things. So I could connect something from seeing one thing happen, and now we're in this moment. And people are like, how is this little kid even doing this? But I think the thing for Miss Porter was she was patient enough in the moment. Like
Mm.
those small moments, she was patient with me. I talk about wanting to go outside to play one day, and it was raining. And she said, we can't go outside. And in my Yolanda way, I said, well, someone could be on the roof with a water hose. Now, in most places, that is, a write up, depending on how far you go back, a paddling in school, definitely a phone call home.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Porter said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Well, somebody could be on the water hose on the roof with the water hose. Doesn't mean it's raining because we see rain at the window." And she took me by my hand. We walked out of the class and we went through the double doors. And she walked me out into the rain. And she said, "Is it raining?" And I looked up, but I looked at the roof too to be sure that it might be raining, but someone could still be over there.
Yeah.
It is a possibility. And so we ran back inside out of the rain, giggling and laughing. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to stay inside.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was just that gentle moment where she could have really gone to the extreme of a level of punishment. Mm-hmm. So I do think it is, when you are in those moments, just be patient and gentle. And then the second thing is, when you look at a dozen of eggs, no two eggs look the same.
Yeah.
And so you cannot handle people as if they are exactly the same. Wow. So you treat them differently based on how they present to you. And she knew that I was tough in my exterior. I was a little, tough girl, but I had this prissy side of me that was still peeking out of this toughness. And she just knew how to handle me. And so I think about patience and gentleness, but also looking at the individual as just that. They are an individual. There are no two the same. Even with identical twins, you're going to find something that's different.
Yeah. And I imagine sort of that philosophy and that way of handling with care people that plays a part in how you are able to build people and processes and organizations and all the things that you build, professions, right? That understanding that each person is a unique individual, a unique soul. They have unique experiences, unique gifts, and you're able to, with patience, and I would imagine even a little bit of curiosity, right? If not a lot of curiosity, to really figure out what is unique in this person or in this opportunity that we can really unpack, that we can really liberate and set free. Am I onto something? Am I?
There is definitely a little bit of me. So, for example, in my current role, I have one of the departments that I oversee. There are 8 people that have the same title.
Mhm.
And when I tell you, every one of them, they come and they show up differently. But I'm expecting them to meet the same goal and meet at the same finish line.
Yeah.
So there is a small part of me, and I will have to say, I went on to get my master's in leadership and organizational development because I was so curious in how to develop people and how to look at this system, how to look at this process, and how do these things work together. But it challenges me every single day to deal with each person on an individual basis while trying to get to a consistent outcome.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a nerd in me that's just like, what am I looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself in my actual notebook jotting little things, and then in the notebook in my mind saying, I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's powerful. Um, so you are a builder of people. Um, and we acknowledge that, that is God's work. And it sounds like, or at least for me, it feels like the building of people um, can look any kind of way, right? Like it's sometimes when we talk about quote unquote God's work, people maybe automatically think about traditional ministry. They may think about what's happening in the mosque or the synagogue, but really with Sabrina Nichole, really trying to expand people's understanding of all of the many ways that God is working through people. And yet and still, we know this is God's work. We know you're building people, processes, and professions. You're doing it in a certain package. You're doing it as a woman. You're doing it as, I'll even add this layer to it, a woman of color, right? What are some of the unique challenges from your perspective for women and maybe even women of color who are doing God's work similar to how you're doing it?
Well, I think because, again, I show up in so many places to do this work. I do attend a church. I have my job. I have my consulting business. I have students that I've taught over the years that are still connected to me. I think one of the greatest challenges is to remain authentic. And because there are times where I find myself having to go back to my friend circle to get my cup filled, because I'm also doing work that requires me to pour out, and I'm pouring in places that cannot always necessarily reciprocate. So I have to be very cautious not to run empty. So I find myself circling back to my friend circle and my family circle. So that's one of the challenges, is to make sure that you're being you, that you're taking care of yourself, and that you stay in your integrity. Once you do certain amount of growth and development in your profession, you hit a certain level where people challenge your right to sit in the seats where you sit. And that is whether you are a woman or you're a woman of color. Now, there are some added nuances when you add the of color to woman. And And I'll talk about those separately, but I do think that the challenge becomes to not step outside of who you are to prove that you deserve to sit in that seat.
Yeah.
Because the fighter in me wants to say, listen, you don't tell me what to do. And I have earned the right to be here. But then I realized that that still puts me in a position where I have now become the stereotype of who they're trying to push me to be, because that is not who I am. As a woman of color doing God's work, the challenge becomes, how do you not hold the offense when you know people are trying to offend you? For example, you speak so well. Well, why shouldn't I? Or, well, I just, I like the way you are. Like, I like your hair, but I like that yours is clean. Well, why wouldn't my hair be clean? And so it's, you know that there is something offensive there, and there is, whether it is conscious or subconscious, there is an offense. And so I find myself educating in all things. The quickest way to figure out if someone intended offense is to call it out. And so what I have said is, so tell me why you would think that my hair wouldn't be clean. Have you run into a lot of people with hair that looked like mine where it wasn't clean? Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. I said, so then maybe when you present it the next time to someone, you can just stop with, I like your hair.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so that will tell you whether or not there was intended offense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, there are challenges that come with doing God's work, because it's not easy. And I don't care how people describe what God's work is to them, it is never easy work.
Yeah.
If it was easy work, it would be Yolanda's work. It would be Sabrina's work. It'd be Keisha's work. It'd be Louise's work. But God's work is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. You elevating the very unique challenge. Maybe I shouldn't call it a unique challenge, but nonetheless, a challenge of microaggression, right?
Yes.
That whether it's a microaggression from a racial or cultural perspective, or a microaggression from, a gender or sex perspective, navigating that, right? Any quote unquote marginalized group of people in engaging the larger society, or the quote unquote majority society, is going to experience or have times of facing microaggression. Absolutely. What do you do with that, right? And I often think about, in fact, the last interview that I did, we were talking about how do you continue to love on people who don't love on you back, right? Mm-hmm. How do you continue to show up and do God's work in a space where you are not wanted, right? Or you're not respected or appreciated. And I often think about, I wonder, at the point that Jesus knew that Judas was betraying him, how in the world was he still able to sit at the table with him, right? And kind of same thing here is, how do you, Yolanda, or people who feel compelled to do God's work similar to how you do it, how do you continue to build, even when people try to tear down what you're building, right?
Well, I think it's just a gentle reminder of, listen, you can't remove me from a seat that you didn't put me in.
Oh, now you're saying something. You better preach. You better preach.
That's number one. You did not authorize me to sit here, and you cannot authorize me to have to leave or vacate. That is the first. But I also think it is just a reminder that now this is what often gets me in trouble as well, because I say things the way I feel it. Sometimes things are just above people.
Yeah.
And if I am trying to do God's work, I can't be hyper focused on man's problems.
Yes.
Specifically when your problem is with the skin that I show up in, or the body that I show up in.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't focus on that. It's above you. And so I've had to find unique ways to say that. I find when I've gotten to the C-suite, I have people who say things to me like, I don't believe in hierarchy or the org chart. And I, in my mind, say, well, that's because you've not earned a seat at the
Mm,
top of it.
mm,
So you don't understand the weight of getting to that point. And even their livelihood is dependent upon you navigating them to a goal.
yeah.
And so what I have said is, I am not better than you as a person. I simply rank higher than you.
Yeah.
And that deserves a level of respect. The
Yeah.
same that I will give you, but it just deserves a level of respect for what the weight is of sitting there.
Yeah.
Because my paycheck is dependent upon your goals, but yours is dependent upon my leading and navigating in a way that we all get there.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's to me, it is a complicated picture of getting along with people. What we learned in kindergarten. How do we get along?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Good stuff. Good stuff. And you said something in that, there is much more I often think about, the way my mom taught me and the way that I grew up sort of in church, hearing and understanding that, they say the higher the level, the bigger the devil.
yeah.
This concept of not calling people devils, right? But this idea, this concept of the more you advance or are promoted in leadership, the bigger the challenges you face, the greater the responsibility. And sometimes people don't understand that. I think about even in my role, there are times when I have to close my door, or there are times when I just have to outright leave a certain, leave my office to go somewhere else. And to someone who doesn't understand, it may appear as though you just do whatever you want to do, Sabrina. No, 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 you don't understand. I'm going.
Peace, honey.
Yes, I'm going and I'm working in a place and in a way that I truly can do my best work for the good of all of us, right? And so yeah, that just stirs and resonates in me. So let me ask you this, Yolanda, because I'm sure the audience wants to know, considering all that we talked about, considering your journey, and I mean, you've already dropped so many nuggets of wisdom. What advice would you have for other women who feel called or compelled to do God's work like you?
So the first thing I would say is trust yourself, because no one signs up for God's work just for the sake of signing up. If you feel led and you feel called, trust that. But I would also say fully equip yourself to walk in it.
Mm,
And that is finding balance, whether it's professionally, and there are some other experiences you need to have, emotionally, therapy, counseling. I fully believe in that. I've accessed it myself, because there are times where when you're doing God's work, people's challenges and problems will land in your lap, and you have to make sure you're not a sponge, because it will take a pressing for you to release it, but you will easily absorb it. So emotionally protect yourself. Academically, if there are some things that you need to, another course that you might need to take. I did not understand how important a negotiation and conflict class was going to be for me until I took it. And as a woman doing God's work, people want you to do God's work at the most reasonable or cheap experience for them. And you have to be able to articulate your worth and value. And then socially, are there things that, with your friends, make sure you're spending time. So I always say stay on your P's and Q's, and I just spelled out P's, PEAS, professionally, emotionally, academically, and socially. Prepare yourself for the work. So
I love that.
Prepare yourself. It is a journey. It is fulfilling work. And I don't want people to walk away from this seeing or hearing the challenges and not understanding. it is fulfilling work, especially when, I was walking across the parking lot one day and I hear someone go, "That's Miss Bynum. That's Miss Bynum." And I'm like, uh-oh, that's a student from either elementary school or college. Because that's what they call me. So I look, and this young lady is doing a beeline across the parking lot to tell me that she got accepted to NC State and she got a full scholarship. And she said, and I sat down and I talked to them about what I was going to bring to their college and what it was going to take. And they gave me a full scholarship, because that's something we talked about in class when she went to I was teaching at a community college, a freshman course on how to articulate what you bring so people know what it will cost them to invest in what you will bring. And so it is fulfilling work. We stood in that parking lot and laughed and cried. And, I gave her my phone number, and then fulfilling, she said, "And you look the same. Your smile is still the same." And so, but it is fulfilling work, but you have to prepare to do the work, because there are days where it is far more heavy than fulfilling. But if you can look back on where you've come from, that's the preacher in me. If I look back to where I came from, you see that all of those things led up to the very fulfilling emotion and feeling and thought of, I have not only accepted the challenge to do God's work, I've done it, and I get a chance to see some of the harvest from it. So there is definitely fulfilling. I don't want people to walk away thinking it's just going to hurt or it's going to be hard. Those things are a part of the experience, but not in its totality.
And I'm so glad that you brought that out, because, part of what this conversation is about is bringing awareness, to the many ways in which we do God's work, but also B, some of the unique experiences, challenges of being a woman doing God's work in this way. But I'm so glad you brought us back around to, but here's the benefit. Here's some good things to think about and carry with you as you take care of your P's and Q's. I love that. I'm going to steal that, but I'm going to give you credit. I'm going to give you credit, but I'm going to use that myself, right? Like anything else, when you are leaning into your sense of purpose, your sense of call, there is fulfillment in it, and there's challenge to get there. But I would say, thus says Sabrina, that it's some of the challenge along the way is part of what makes it so fulfilling when you get into it. So Yolanda, elder, master facilitator, master teacher, guru of your own right, what advice would you give to men who maybe want to support, advocate, or ally with women doing God's work the way that you're doing it?
So I mentioned the P's and Q's. The Q's fit perfectly here. Ask the question. Don't make the assumption. There are times where I have had men walk literally beside me and hold me up. As a matter of fact, the majority of my team, they're men. My photographer is male, my tech guru, my website designer, social media males. But they have always asked me the question, where are you going and how can I help? And so that does require some checking of the ego. Because when I say that I'm a builder of people, I'm a leader of leaders, that's inclusive of men. And so there are times where, they have to kind of check their ego to say, okay, I may need to listen to this and do what's being said. A good example, I had a friend who has been in his career now, maybe about 15 years. He wanted a new opportunity, a new role. And I said, well, let me look at your resume. No, I'm all right. I'm good. And I finally said, let me look at your resume. And I said, oh, well, let me rework this for you. Within 30 days, he had about 8 job offers, because simply we just needed to better articulate that this man is absolutely brilliant. I mean, he sits as close to genius as anybody I know other than my father. So just to be able to articulate that, it required him to sit the ego aside to say, yes, I know society tells me I'm supposed to lead and have all the answers, but I do have to ask the questions and walk in collaboration and support.
And what if someone is curious to learn more about the process or different ways that maybe they can develop people, processes, and professions? Where would you direct them to get more information, maybe?
I would start with the basics of organizational development and leadership development, because it helps you understand how people fit into the process.
Mm.
You can have a wonderful system that works, but it's people that's making the systems work. Mm-hmm. And that's whether you're in nonprofit work, whether you're in corporate work, whether you're in ministry, regardless, it's understanding the people dynamic.
Yeah.
Sociology helps, just having that good understanding. So I would tell them to first start there, because again, regardless as to where you are, that's going to help you navigate the space.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I love that. Well, Yolanda, this has been amazing. This truly has been an enjoyable conversation for me, and I'm sure audiences watching from all over. We're going to wind down the conversation, though, with a little segment, a little portion that I like to call paying homage. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I would have for you in that is, as you think about biblical, sacred, fairy tale, I told somebody it can even be a Disney character. Who is your favorite? Who is your favorite woman of story, if you will, and why?
One of my favorites, and I'm going to have to tell you, I'm cheating a little bit. So I pulled up my book, and I actually have a chapter in my book about it, about this woman that I love, and her name is Axa. And most people have not heard of her, and if they have, they've heard very little. So if you want to look her up further, you spell her name Achshah. And her story is in Joshua, the 15th chapter, verse 16 through 19. And it talks about, and I'm just going to paraphrase, I'm not going to read it to you, but in essence, a father had a contest. Whoever could capture the city, they were going to get Axa as a prize. And literally it says, you will have my daughter as a prize. So the gentleman that won her as a prize was very excited to get her as a prize and was given land. But the land was parallel to the desert. She went back to her father and said, I know you've given us land, but now give me water. And so what she asked for was, she said, give me another gift. You have already given me land. Now please give me springs of water too. So Caleb gave her the upper and the lower springs. And the reason that I love Axa so much is in a time where literally she was given as a prize in a competition, she still had the tenacity and the audacity to say, you're going to give me to this man as his wife, but I'm going to make sure that our home will be taken care of, that we will have all of the prosperity that we need in health, wealth, and peace, because not only did she get the upper and lower springs, which meant now you can grow and sell. You could also go by this water to find your peace. That's where I find my happy place, is anywhere near running water. And if I can't get near that, or an ocean or a lake, standing in front of a fountain and listening to the sound will do it for me. But she said, give me what I need so that I can be successful. And in a time where she literally was given as a prize, she still had the audacity to say, but I deserve this. And I'm going to ask for it and convince you to give it to me, and you do. So she is one of the women that I look to. And I love to share her story with folks, because again, it's one of those we don't hear about often, but it is definitely one where I take so much power from, and it makes me kind of sit up in my seat and say, well, she asked for it and she got it. Where she could have gone silent. She could have been insulted and offended. How dare you give me away as a prize? But versus that posture, she took, okay, so I'm going over here, but you're going to give me what I need to thrive. And that's why I like her.
Hey, pass the plate. I love it. You preached about 4 messages. That one right there hit me in my sha-na-na. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. It
Wow.
translates. It really does translate to where we are today. Because how many times are we told, okay, well, you can have this job, but just don't say much, or you can have this job, but we're gonna come up with the strategy and you can implement it. We don't need your input. No, that's not what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna collaborate. We're gonna be collaborative thinkers, and we're gonna strategize together. So that I can help you understand that what you thought would work will probably not work, and for these reasons. And so, I love it because it really does speak to a lot of what I deal with at work.
Yeah. Talk about negotiation skills too. I mean, I'm like, what exactly did she say? What was that conversation?
She asked for springs and walked away she got the land.
Right.
But she walked away with the upper and the lower.
Right.
She is a master negotiator.
Let me tell you. Listen, she said, give me water, and she got twice, double, upper and lower, all that right there. Just cover all. I love it.
I hear a little preach coming.
I'm just saying. I'm not going to do that. It's not my time. It's not my time. It's not my time. So the last sort of question of paying homage is, who is a woman, dead or alive, personally known or not personally known, that you would want to shout out right now as doing God's work? So who would you shout out and why?
So if you will allow me, I know that leaves room for a person, but if I could, just for my story, share 3 women.
Sure.
One being my Aunt Eunice, who as a child helped me understand how to be me. She would get down on her knees and talk to me face to face, because my voice was loud, but my spirit was gentle and soft. And so she was doing God's work because she had to help me understand what that looked like for me. And so much of how I am, I would watch her go into the store, and we would be at a gas station, and she would say, let's get candy. And she would get me something. And then she would say, what's your favorite candy? And the cashier would tell her, and she would get 2, one for her and one for them. And I find myself giving and doing things in that way. So I definitely know that she was doing God's work because she helped me understand what that was at an early age. Then I would move into my career early. I was in my 20s, leading a team of about 15 people. Mm. And I was leading a woman who was old enough to, at the time, had been my grandmother. And she gracefully taught me, her name is Glenda Horton Manning. She gracefully taught me how to lead her, but learn from her. She respected me as her supervisor, but there were moments where she would slide in a lesson that I needed. And so I chuckle because my favorite, I don't know if she knew what she created, but I had this suit that I loved. It was my favorite. It was black. It was Jones, New York. I thought it was like the best thing ever. And I had lost some weight, and I was still wearing the suit. And she came into my office one day. She said, can I tell you something? I said, sure. She said, come here, stand up. And I turned around and she said, all of this fabric is too much. You need to go to the tailor and get your suit tailored, or get a new suit. And I thought, okay, here I am thinking I'm fabulous with it jacked up above all of my waist. It was almost up to my neck, trying to salvage this suit. But now I think about what that looks like, and walking into a space, and I always buy my business suits 2 sizes too big. I take them to my seamstress, and she shapes them to my body. And it is about being the brand. And she taught me that because people believe you when you show up looking authentically you.
Yeah.
And they won't believe you when you show up in a costume. I can't show up and tell you I'm doing God's work. Unless God's work is being a clown, I can't show up looking like one. And then I would move now into where I am in my life and in my life's journey. So I have a chosen sister. Her name is Denitra Culp. She walks literally parallel to my life. Mm. She would cringe that I even mentioned her name. She loves to stay in the background. But she does so much to help me be me. On the days where I come home from work and it's been a rough day, she was like, so tell me what you're upset about. Let's talk about it. We're gonna talk through it. Or when I've had a rough week and I get to the end and I get a phone call on Saturday morning, I should have been at the gym, and she says, so I know that this was a rough week. I just want to see how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. Her work in just being gentle, authentic, true, caring, considerate, and kind.
Yeah.
She does that with everybody around her. She owns a salon, and she is also a sociologist, and I tell her it's a master fit for her, because she can take what's said and literally bring you back to a point of decision. And sometimes the decision is there is no decision. And so she is doing God's work daily. I just get to benefit from it because she loves me.
Yeah.
As my sister. So those three women, I would say, and I could name so many more. I get a chance to work with someone named Twani Dewberry. She's amazing. She challenges me to do my best work. She challenges me to deal with the parts of my life where she said to me one day, she said, you do realize your challenge is getting to deal with people where they are, with their emotions, what they show up with and what they bring to the table, because that part makes you uncomfortable. And I was like, you don't know me. And she does. But again, it challenged me to say, okay, maybe I'm missing something with my team because I am the slider over of a box of tissue when they start to cry. So maybe I'm missing something in that moment. And for them, it would not feel like what I've experienced, which is the gentleness in the moment and paying attention. So she challenges me to think about my work at another level, where I've always been the master this and the expert in this and the go-to of this. She challenges me to think higher.
Yeah.
So there's so many I could name, but we don't have all day.
Listen, I love it. I love it. And so, on behalf of every person who has been touched by your gifts, have grown because of God's work through you, Yolanda, I want to say thank you and shout out Aunt Eunice and Glenda Horton Manning and Denitra. I want to say shout out, kudos, thank you for what you invested in Yolanda, so that now, or what you are investing in Yolanda, so that now she can pour into so many other people. Yolanda, that's beautiful. And I certainly hope that for those who are able to hear you shout them out, I hope that they get a chance to hear that and know the impact that they've had on your life. I love it. So everybody by now who watches this knows that you're fabulous. You're amazing. You're wonderful. You are somebody, all that good stuff that anybody who wants to be built as a person, wants to be built in a profession, all of that. I mean, you named so many skills and so many ways that you can help people. What is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
The best way is to visit my website, Beyond Expectations, as an S on the end, consulting.com. There's a contact page there. I read them myself. So that's the best way to reach me. Just share with me what you're looking for, and I'll schedule a time with you. There's a scheduler there to do a consultation. And I would be happy to talk with you about how we move you beyond your expectations and taking you beyond in your journey.
Love that. And for those of you who were like, can she repeat that? I didn't get to write it down. Have no fear. You will see the link in the description for the video. So just click that link. It's going to take you directly to Yolanda's website so that she can take you beyond. Yolanda, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation.
A pleasure to be here and to talk with you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks. See you later.